Spoiler warning for The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, Sword Art Online Alicization, High School DxD, Future Diary, Maho Sensei Negima, Sekirei, Neon Genesis Evangelion, as well as discussions of transphobia and homophobia. A cornerstone of the worldview of the entire setting of Haruhi Suzumiya is that this is the world constructed by Haruhi, and everything that happens in it is because of her obvious or subconscious longing. When me and my sister were younger, we thought we saw something deeper, a code beyond the surface. If Haruhi really was the god of this world, then why was the world so aligned with Kyon's desires? Isn't he the one that didn't do his homework over the Endless Eight? Isn't he the one who was lonely? Who wanted some excitement in his life? What if Kyon had constructed Haruhi to be the god of his world? In reality, there is a much simpler explanation. The author of Haruhi Suzumiya is a man, writing about moe girls, for men. That's the purpose behind the story. That is the god of this world. So, why is Itsuki there? Itsuki is a handsome, polite young man, apparently here to represent the mysterious transfer student trope and join Haruhi's club. He's an esper. He's sweet, but a little manipulative, encouraging of Kyon's relationship with Haruhi, and many of his statements could be either ambiguous truths or lies that he never clarifies. None of that precludes him from being a girl. Perhaps it is because Haruhi Suzumiya is technically not a harem. Sure, 90% of its cast are girls who have a deep fascination or motive to get closer to Kyon, but let's talk about an unambiguous harem, High School DxD. Issei starts off his series by saying this: I want a girlfriend. No, more than that. I want a harem. The joke being, of course, that he continues to say this long past the point when this is his evident reality. When he joins Rios' peerage, he is immediately disappointed. How is he supposed to have a harem when Yuto is already right there? Already the vice president of the occult club. Yuto is a handsome, polite young man who perfectly represents his role as knight. Burdened with concealing a deeply tragic backstory, he nevertheless does his best to confront his problems head-on, is satisfied with his friendship with Issei, and never even considers a romantic relationship with any member of his peerage. In terms of personality, Yuto and Itsuki really only have one thing in common. They're Bishonen archetypes. They're here to show something important about these series, that the girls had other options. They chose to be in a harem with a guy who wasn't very charming and wasn't as handsome. This isn't always the case. In Maho Sensei Negima, Fate Aberruncus is a handsome, polite young man whose calm facade conceals his birth as an incredibly powerful tool, stronger and more powerful than even Negi. When he claims he feels no emotions, he nevertheless treats both his enemies and allies with grace and dignity, showing only eagerness when he begins to fight Negi in earnest. His feelings for Negi are to the point where some of the girls consider him a love rival, their bond deep and enduring. Aru Akise is both analytical and social, a calm and logical person who is nevertheless friendly and easy to talk to. While he wants the best for people, he's not above bending the truth to get his way. Why? Well, he's not human. A puppet of God, he was created to bend the world in ways he does not know or understand. His love for Yukateru, Dios claims, is false, merely constructed just like the rest of his personality. Itsuki brings up a similar claim whenever he acts overtly close to Kyon. Homura is a calm, collected, and Gentle person with a sweet personality. He's handsome with a bit of an anxious habit that he likes to conceal. In his persona as a host, he's flirtatious and well-dressed, but around the main cast all of that vanishes as he seeks people to connect with. He's a virtuous type whose purpose as guardian is to make sure that other Sekirei aren't mistreated. He also claims his affections for Minato are engineered from the bond alone. Created to be perfect above humanity. If he feels emotions, then the emotions are themselves a lie, forced on him from an omnipotent creator he can neither understand nor control. A liar, but not full of malicious intent. Good with women, but in the abstract sense. The ideal man made flesh. Now, let's talk about Eugeo. Eugeo was born into a rural village in the human kingdom of Underworld within the virtual reality project known as Alicization. A kind-hearted and considerate person, Eugeo became the first artificial Fluctlight to break the seal that compelled him to obey the laws of his world. To stand aside and let the powerful assault their victims is not within his nature. Or at least, it's not within his nature now that he's friends with Kirito. At the end of the Alicization arc, Eugeo dies. Why? Sword Art Online may have started out as a death game, but it's not a series where important characters tend to die. If you've got enough characterization that you appear in more than 2 episodes, you're usually safe. Except for dear Eugeo. There are many reasons for this. The first one is a practical limitation, though one the author has ignored before. How was Eugeo going to come with Kirito into the real world, or the next story arc? He's not a mascot character like Yui is, and Yui is already fully occupying the helpful AI niche. Could his data be transferred into Aincrad? Yes, but he'd be an NPC in a world full of players. It could be done, but could it be done well, without it seeming like a strange and not quite right ending? Not that SAO hasn't done plenty of those. Or he could live in the underworld, while Kirito leaves him behind. Kirito has to go back to Asuna after all. Alicization is just one more stop along his road. Unlike many other characters I've just mentioned, Eugeo is never canonically or jokingly portrayed as having feelings for Kirito. Even on his deathbed, Alice is there. They are both, supposedly, fighting for Alice. Eugeo for her memories, Kirito for her soul. Unfortunately, this whole exchange highlights the worst part of this arc, that compared to Eugeo, Alice's narrative tends to feel like a ripped up mess. She doesn't ever really get to be a person, just a plot device and then a lost Lenoir, forever doomed to Asuna's awful little birdcage of characterization. It doesn't have to be like this, Kirito says, but Eugeo is right. In order for the girls to seem like people, Eugeo can't be standing next to them. He has to die. Kaoru Nagisa is a late introduction to Neon Genesis Evangelion's plot, first introduced only in episode 24 out of 26. Within his short time frame, Shinji gets to know him and discovers he is a calm and pleasant individual with an easygoing, straightforward personality who respects Shinji and treats him with an intimate familiarity. Intelligent and yet down to earth, Kaoru is, in his own series terms, an angel of free will, his personality allowing him to deny the order of the heavens that all other angels must obey. This isn't directly because of Shinji. The potential to create his own path was there before he ever developed his own fascination with the young man. I realize I discussed Eugeo's death with the confidence of someone who assumed my audience all knew how Sword Art Online's most recent anime season had ended. My deepest apologies for this assumption. After being separated from Kirito and Alice during the end of the first part of the arc, Yujiro was caught, tortured, and brainwashed into being an Infinity Knight, convinced that he had never known love or been loved. He carries no recollection of his past, only acknowledging the sword that Kirito carries when they are finally reunited. He regains his memories through this fight, but does not regain the most important piece of his memory: the wish for a life beyond this moment. Seeking to stop the ruler of his world from causing the people of the underworld to lose their free will completely, Yujiro makes his final choice and pours his soul into the blue rose sword that is the object that connects him to Kirito. The sword is powerful enough to end the arc, but afterwards, of course, comes death. "It's fine," Yujiro insists. "We still have a conflict. If I got up, we'd have to solve that argument instead of me dying in your arms." Alice is allowed to transcend worlds, but not him. Shinji kills Kaoru at the end of episode 24. When Kaoru reveals himself to be an angel, Shinji felt betrayed, but he didn't want to kill him. When Kaoru dies, Shinji will be all alone in the world. Kaoru's last words of warmth and comfort throw salt in Shinji's open wounds. The idea of an ideal counterpart to a flawed hero is a tried and true one. Where the hero is awkward, the counterpart is smooth. Where the hero is inexperienced, the counterpart is a veteran. Where the hero gives in to despair, the counterpart can only turn to them and say, "What is there to despair? I find comfort in you." Like this, the counterpart can seem to be nothing but a mouthpiece of a dream. But within their stories, they yearn for agency. What can they do to free themselves from the strings of their puppeted existence? Fate finds his freedom in Negi. Chasing him page by page, arc by arc, series by series, Fate's love only grows more obvious over time. For the girls within the series, their love crushes their personalities, leaving them blank and hollow. But for Fate, that love opens up the door of everything his creation denies him: flaws. His love makes his character fuller, his emotions more volatile, his longings and desires desperate and blatant. That he survived this is a miracle. Homura is a major character throughout most of Sekirei. Introduced early on as the fiery do-gooder, his self-appointed position is guardian, someone who makes sure other, more vulnerable Sekirei aren't taken advantage of by their ashikabi, before and even after the contract is made. The perils and consent issues that plague Sekirei are his greatest bane and deepest fear. He claims to sleep with women a lot, searching for his own connection, but it's obvious why this wouldn't work. He's far too aware of the power imbalance inherent to winging Sekirei to ever let someone do that to him. He falls in love with Minato over 100 chapters of the manga, arcs and arcs of nonsense. And with his love comes his fall. The ideal counterpart does not fall in love. That is not his place. Fate survived his love, but the author of Sekirei was crueler, or perhaps simply much more homophobic. Homura's love triggers a forced biological sex transition into a female body, which he takes extremely poorly. It's still gay, of course, and Homura remains uncomfortable with his feelings largely because they are gay. Well, at least his feelings don't actually cause him to self-cremate. Aruakise kisses Yukiteru, possibly to establish his rivalry with Yunai, possibly to establish his place in a world not meant for him to live in, possibly because he's in love and desperate for at least one person in the world to understand him. He'd be better off seeking understanding from anyone except for Yukiteru, but that's the breaks. In the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumaya, the alternate universe Itsuki, the one who's never heard of espers and doesn't contemplate the uselessness of creating anything, in a world doomed to be destroyed and remade, says it's a shame that Haruhi's into Kyon because he'd like to date her. There are two interesting implications to derive from this. Either the Itsuki from the main timeline is lying to Kyon about his feelings for Haruhi, or the Itsuki that knows Kyon isn't interested in Haruhi. Both are funny, but we are going to be focusing on the second interpretation of the two. Itsuki doesn't have to act as the only competent member of the SOS brigade. Shockingly, almost every member of the brigade has areas of expertise they are happy to use for the success of whatever Haruhi currently wants to do. The behind-the-scenes manipulation that both makes him vice chief of the brigade and makes Kyon complain so much about him happened because Itsuki has a visceral fear of the world, namely that it is always on the brink of ending. The Espers fight a losing battle against the mysterious monsters within zones. The SOS fights a losing battle to keep Haruhi entertained. The only thing Itsuki can rely on to not fall apart on him on a moment's notice is Kyon. This is where Kyon's stubborn ordinariness stops being a poor reflection of Itsuki's more considerate nature, and thus allows Itsuki to step outside the boundaries set by the nature of his show. If he's not there to act as Kyon's ideal self, what is he there for? Aru Akise was created to love Yukiteru, but he was created to be in doomed, unrequited love. Deus rips away his exaltations in this one selfish desire, denying him even the ability to regret that Yuki doesn't love him back. Expecting Kyon to take a stance on any romantic opinion is asking a lot of him, and Kyon is a big believer in giving the bare minimum, both in reliable narration and in basic exposition. This is where Kirito gets to shine. The author of SAO has long been of the philosophy that adding a new woman every arc is just like a murder mystery throwing in a corpse. It's expected, and you kind of need it so that the plot can function. Of course, most murder series don't have their corpses stick around and act as side characters after their time in the spotlight is over. The corpse of Alice's Asian arc is the titular character, Alice. However, there are two main problems right off the bat. First, Alice is intended to act as the princess in the castle, waiting to be rescued, so she is snatched away at the earliest possible opportunity. This leaves the author with a conundrum. He needs someone for Kirito to bounce off of that won't take away the very badly established and practically non-existent bond between Alice and Kirito. There's only one possible solution. He needs to invent a guy. This guy needs to be Kirito's guide through the underworld, but also the ordinary everyman so as to not outshine Kirito's own traits. The restrictive ideology that forces fate to have been created better and more talented than Negi free bounds in SAO, forcing Yujiro into a paler reflection of Kirito's virtues. Good with a sword, just not quite as good. Calm, polite, easygoing, Kirito is all of these things as well. Yujiro's strongest trait comes from his restrictions. Kirito isn't limited by the laws of the underworld, but Yujiro is. His very soul is artificial. If Yujiro wants to fight for justice in this world, if he wants to become the paragon archetype that the rest of this cast belongs to, then he needs to leave his role as Kirito's shadow self and step in front of him. In doing this, Yujiro takes 3 full minutes to bleed out in Kirito's arms. In Yukyu Holder, Maho Negima Sensei's sequel, the mangaka has Kuromaru, the friend and rival of main character Tota. Kuromaru is from a demonic species that does not choose a gender until age 16, which means that the mangaka can now neatly dodge all of Fate's issues. a rival character that will naturally turn into an ugly and boring harem member as soon as the subject of their attraction to the male lead can come up. It's not gay if Kuromaru shows signs of affection. It's just a sign that they'll choose to be a woman. The bullet that Fate Avarunkus dodged with such grace lodged itself in an unfortunate, defenseless target. Yuto comes from the same stock as Yu-Gi-Oh! High School DxD doesn't have enough thematic coherence to grasp hold of a coherent plot line, let alone the depth for a character seeking to push past the boundaries of their own narrative. Let's talk about his backstory anyway. Yuto was an orphan taken in by the church and used as part of a series of deadly experiments known as the Holy Sword Project. As one of only 2 survivors out of hundreds, the ghosts of his fallen friends power his most powerful abilities, always weighing on him. While he works for Rias out of gratitude for her saving him from dying after his escape, he carries no deeper connection to her mission. Even after accepting the name she gives him, there is a somber chasm between their lives. Why did he live? Why is he still alive? These are questions that haunt him, though of course in an irrelevant and irreverent way, due to this story being about Issei literally using magic to strip women. Itsuki's apartment is a shell of a place. There are no personal items, posters, or distinctive furniture. He might as well have walked into an IKEA store and ordered one of their preset displays. None of the members of the brigade think this is particularly unusual. Both the time travelers and the robots also keep their secrets very close to their chest. If Itsuki is condemned to live as an archetype of a man in a cardboard world, then at least there is one person in this world who sees him as human. I regret being so soft on Miss Kasai, Aru Akise says to Yukiteru. The boy holds a gun at him and is surrounded by corpses and broken buildings. Then it wouldn't have ended up like this. This is, just to clarify, both true and not true. One of the follies of the Future Diaries is that they tend to lend illusory omnipotence to their holders, leading them to believe they can understand the motives of the other candidates simply through reading about their actions. Yuno's end goal changes as she falls in love with this Yukiteru. Akise's goal to have Yukiteru be the last one alive is actually a goal he shares with Yuno, not Yukiteru. Perhaps if he had taken her role, then he would simply be the 10,000-year tragedy instead of just one more of the fallen. Yukiteru is an influenceable guy. Maybe he could have managed to fall in love. But he can't take her role. Before he confesses, he asks of the god of time, "Was I real? If I wasn't real, then at least my love must have been real, right? If everything about me was artificially controlled, then at least I have claimed this transgression for my own. I have rebelled against the universe in this small way." "No," Dio says. "It's fake." "It's not fake," Akise says. "I'll take this detective's journal, and I'll prove it." He proves it with his death. "It had to be like this, Kirito," Yujiro says.
もしかしたらありしたのじゃなくて、与えるものなんだって。
The narrative condemns an element of its own creation. Hi, I'm Czar, and I talk about anime, animation, and storytelling concepts. Like, comment, and subscribe. See ya!